You're listening to Montreal Now with Aaron Rand and Natasha Hall on CJAD 800.
That is James Mennie. He is over at the Montreal Gazette. Jim, let's start off with the obvious. That, of course, is results of the by-election at NDG Westmount yesterday. I mean, this is going to be my question coming up because the thing that struck me the most is voter turnout. Below 30%. You kind of sit here and wonder what the hell is going on.
Okay, you know what? And I'm glad you're asking this question, and I was going to kind of suggest it to you in my spiel. Can I give you my speculation?
Please.
What happened? Mm-hmm. I think Anglo-Quebecers are tired. They're exhausted. Okay? I think we had a by-election here, the stakes for which were very, very clear. This is a riding that identifies 44% Anglo, about 25% Allo, and 30% Francophone. The issue on the table, the weaving of Bill 96 into C13 was there for all to see. It was suggested that is indeed why the incumbent, Marc Garneau, had decided to retire, that he too was fed up with where the government was going with this. But I honestly believe when 70% of the electorate stays home and you send a first-time candidate not only to Ottawa, but pretty much into Trudeau's cabinet with 15% of voter support in that riding, I think there's a message there. But people are suggesting, well, Anglos, they talk a lot, but they don't stand up. I would never presume to say, well, I'm speaking for the Anglo community. I don't think anybody really speaks for the Anglo community. But based on my own experience and what I've heard from those that I know, we're just tired. And the idea, because it was a gorgeous day yesterday, perfect day for exercising your democratic right. I think a lot of people just said, we know that even if we said a symbolic candidate, it's not going to change anything. That law is still going to be there. I heard the clip on CJAD this morning with Ms. Gainey sort of like not answering a question about C13, and I think that sets the tone for her tenure as an MP for the area. But I don't think it's more complicated than that. We have seen, especially with this government, compared to other governments, including one that was also run by someone named Trudeau, how essentially legislators in Quebec can do literally whatever they want. How they can actually normalize discrimination, be it in Bill 21, what has been perceived as illegal conduct in the form of Bill 96, unconstitutional conduct in the form of Bill 96, and the minister responsible for overseeing the Official Languages Act says there's only one language in danger in Canada, and that's French. Well, that may be to the strict adherence to all of your syllables. Yeah, that's true. But let's face it, there's a large community in Quebec which is being forced out, but not run out of town on a rail. And I've said this before. This is not Bill 96 should be called the "Wouldn't You Be Happier Someplace Else" Act. And I think for a lot of people of a certain age are saying, "The hell with you! I'm going to stay where I am. I've worked hard." But I'm sure there are a lot of parents out there listening to me right now who are having very, very serious thoughts, or perhaps have already made the decision about whether their kids are going to grow up here, or perhaps have a more successful and less annoying existence elsewhere in the country. But all this said, when you look at the way Ottawa, all of Ottawa, the NDP, the Conservatives, certainly the Bloc, and certainly leading the pack, the Trudeau Liberals, how this federal government has perceived people who supported it in this province, I'm not surprised that a lot of people stayed home. And quite frankly, given what's been happening here in Quebec in terms of the illegal discriminatory laws that have been tabled and accepted in this province, it doesn't bode well. I think the only thing we have left now are court challenges, and even then, will they be subject, as Bill 21 was, to the notwithstanding clause? Will the government just appeal it till everyone drops dead? I don't know. But what happened last night, I think, was not a symptom. I think it's a result. I think a lot of Anglos in Quebec have just said, I know, I should be taking to the streets. But the bottom line is no one politically has our back in this country.
I agree. But I do think, even though we know it was a by-election and it was the time to send the message, I feel like people are still thinking big picture, and people who might have been wary to lend support to Liberals are still somehow thinking that they've got to start trying to keep Poilievre from becoming prime minister. So I think that came into play. I do.
I'm not saying it aren't right, Natasha, but that is a really, really, really sad. If the idea of taking the fundamental tissue of our legal system, which is legal rights, which is fundamental human rights, and I'm not going over the top here. If the idea is, well, we can trash those because we don't want Mr. Worst to come into office, then I say our problems are much larger than we realize.
If that was the case, I'm not so sure that was the case at all. I mean, in Natasha's case, you talked about having to wait as long as you did before finally making up your mind who you were going to vote for. You would have thought other people maybe in that riding in NDG Westmount might have done the same. That's certainly not the impression I'm getting.
They literally just didn't turn out.
Yeah.
I think they didn't know what to do. They didn't know how to feel about any of it, and so they just remained
Well,
passive.
here's a fun fact, guys. Last night's vote, the proportion of support for Ms. Gainey dropped by 3% compared to that for Mr. Garneau in the last election. Support for the NDP candidate dropped by 6%. And pay attention to the numbers now. And an amazing coincidence, support for the Green Party candidate increased by 9%, not 9 points.
Oh, that's very interesting.
So some people obviously were moving their votes around, but I'm telling you, and I got to tell you, I mean, I can't even remember how many years I've been with CJAD, but I know there have been at least 10 times I've been behind that microphone arguing with listeners about how important it is to go out to vote. People say, my vote doesn't matter, and this and that. Yeah. So, well, go out and spoil your ballot, but go out. But now, in these past 5 years, guys, I've looked at what's happening here, and I can fully understand why someone would, and it's not a matter of trying to send a message. Someone would want to do something else other than, as they're waiting to stand in line to vote, realizing that there isn't a single name on that ballot that is going to have my interest at heart.
Which is an even sadder kind of thing to take into account, because there were 10 candidates on that ballot. Yep. Yes, you can say there were some fringe candidates as well, but still, I wonder what that shift, and we're not going to discuss it now, that shift to the Green, that 9 percentage point swing, it's almost like, let's go ahead and vote for them because it's the right thing to do. Plus, we know they could never win this riding anyway.
Yeah, but I'm going to give my vote to the Green guy. Yeah. Because I certainly don't want to vote. I was going to vote Liberal, but I'm not going to vote for this Liberal. Yeah. And as for the NDP and the Conservatives, well, they're having they're having a competition with the Liberals, with the federal Liberals, over how much they can cave to Francois Legault's CAQ. I'm very, very sorry, but that I'm not overstating this. And to think if Quebec's political landscape right now is that valuable, I mean, really, God help us all, especially if Francois Legault, I don't know if he's a poker player, but if Francois Legault sees how desperate Trudeau is to fold his cards, God knows what he's going to bluff us with next.
James Mennie, the Montreal Gazette. Jim, thank you.
Adamant.